Well, hello there guys, it's me Kids Bombman again. It's been a while since I have read first 6 chapters of Fishy Pig from chapter 9. I'm going to continue reading this storybook about Babe the Sheep Pig. So, I have covered a story of Babe the Sheep Pig has to practice his sheepdog trial on chapter 9 still. Okay, so I'm going to continue reading this Babe the Sheep Pig by Dickens Smith on 5th part of this video. I'm going to start reading this book through page 92, still on page 9. So, looks like we are getting close to the end of this story. Shall I continue? He shook his head in the wonder, and that sly grin spread over his face. I reckon you gave them some to worry about, he said, and he broke a gun and took out the cartridges. Meanwhile, Fly, standing guard up in the far field, was terribly agitated. She knew, of course, that some dogs will attack sheep, sometimes even a very dogs trained to look after them. But surely not her sheepdog pig. Surely Babe could not have done such a thing. Yet there had been, at the centre of that scene of chaos, blood-stained and standing over the dead owl. What would the boss did to him? What perhaps had he already done? Yet she could not leave these fools to find out. At least, though, she suddenly realised they could tell her what had happened. If the shock hadn't driven what little sense they had out of their stupid heads. Never before in a long life had Fly sunk to engaging sheep in a conversation. They were there to be ordered about, like soldiers, and like soldiers, never to answer back. She approached a nearest one with distaste, and it promptly back away from her. Stand still, fool, she barked, and tell me who chased you. Who killed that old one? Wolf, said the sheep automatically. They growled with enormous. Was that the only word the half-wits knew? She put the question differently. Was it the pig that chased you? Was it Babe? She said. Babe, pleaded the sheep eagerly. What does that mean, bonehead? Barks Fly. Was it, or it wasn't? Wasn't it? Wolf, said the sheep. Somehow Fly controlled her anger at the creature's stupidity. I must know what happened, she thought. Babe's always thinking about being polite to these woolly idiots. I have to try it. I must know. She took a deep breath. Please, she said. The sheep which had began to raised its head sharply and stared at her with the expression of a total amazement. Say that again? It said. A number of others, overhearing, moved towards the Collie. Please, said Fly, swallowing hard. Could you be kind enough to tell me? Hark, interrupted the first sheep. Hark, hark. Whereupon the whole flock ran and gathered round. They stood in silence, every eye fixed wonderingly on her, every mouth hanging open. Poops, thought Fly. Just when I wanted to ask one quickly, the whole fat-headed lot come round. But I must know the truth about my babe. However terrible it is, please, she said, once more in a voice choked with her effort of being humble. Could you be kind enough to tell me what happened this morning, did babe? But she got no further, for at the mention of the pig's name, the whole flock burst out into the great cry of "Babe!" listening for the first time ever to what the sheep were actually saying. Fly could hear individual voices competing to make themselves heard in what was nothing less than a hymn of praise. Bacon, he saved us. He drove the wolves away, he made them pay. Hip hip hooray, hip hip hooray, hip hip hooray. What a sense of relief flooded all over her as she heard and understood what the words of the sheep. It had been sheep warriors, after all, and her boy had come to the rescue. He was not a villain, he was a hero. Hogget and Babe heard the racket as they climbed a hill, and the farmer sent the pig ahead, fearing that perhaps the warriors had returned. Under cover of a noise, Babe arrived on the scene, unnoticed by Fly, just in time to hear reply. "Oh, thank you," she cried to the flock. "Thank you all so much for telling me. How kind of you." "Gosh, Mum," said the voice behind her, "what's come over you?" Because Babe had now saved the flock not only from rustlers, but also from the warriors. The Hoggets could not do too much for him, because he was a pig. So Farmer Hogget increasingly found himself thinking of Babe's dog and fed him accordingly. They gave him unlimited supplies of what they supposed he could not have too much of, namely food, because he was strong-minded and refilled in his newfound speed. He ate sparingly of it, because there was always a lot left over. Fly became fat, and the chickens chubby, and the dogs dumpy, and the very rats and mice rolled happily, but the stables with stomachs fell to bursting. Mrs. Hogget even took to calling Babe to the back door to feed him some titbit or the other that she thought might particularly fancy, and from here it was but a short step to inviting him into the house, which one day she did, when the farmer came in for his tea. He found out not only Fly, but also Pig lying happily asleep beside the eager cooker. And afterwards, when he sat down in his armchair in a seating room and switched on the television, Babe came to sit beside him, and they watched our 6 o'clock news together. "He likes it," said Hogget to his wife when she came into the room. Mrs. Hogget nodded her head a great many times, as usual had a few words to say on the subject. "Dear little chap, thought you can't call him little no longer. He hath grown so much. Why's big enough to know what? Not that we ever shall now. Over my dead body, though I hope it aren't, if you see what I do mean. Just look at him. We should have brought him in the house a long ago. No reason, no, why not, is there now? He might mess the carpet," said the Farmer Hogget. Never, cried Mrs. Hogget, shaking her head the entire time that she was speaking. He's no more likely to mess them he is to fly. He'll ask to go out when he wants to do his dues, just like a good clean dog would. Got more brains than a dog, he has. Why wouldn't surprised me to hear it was rounding up from the old sheep of young. Wouldn't, honestly, though I suppose you think I daft. Farmer Hogget grinned to himself. He did not tell his wife what she had never yet noticed, that all of the work of a farm was now done by Sheepig, and had no intention of telling her of the final part of his plan, which was nothing less than to enter Pig in that stunnest of her tests. The Grand Challenge Sheepdog Trials open to all Coomers. Never in his working life had he owned an animal good enough to compete in his trials. Now, at last, he had one, and he was not going to be stopped from realising his ambition by the fact that it was a pig. In a couple of weeks, they would be competing against the best sheepdogs in the country, would be appearing, in fact, on a very television screen they were now watching. No, you're not daft, he said, but you won't half get the surprise when you sit here and watch it, he thought, and so will a lot of other folks. His plan was simple. He would appear at the Grand Challenge Trials with Fly, and for last possible moment swap her for Pig. But by then it will be too late for anyone to stop him. It didn't matter what happened afterwards. They could disqualify him, fine him, send him to prison, anything, as long as he could win Pig. Just one glorious one, just to show them all. And they couldn't say they hadn't been warned. The name was there on the entry form. He had been worried, for what he was a faithful man, that the heading might say, name a dog, and then whatever he put would be a lie. But he had been lucky. Name of competitor, for Tom said, name of competitor, F. Hogget, name of entry, Pig. This, for simple truth, shepherds usually gave their dogs short names, like Gib or Moss. It's so much quicker and easier than shouting Bartholomew or Wilhelmina. And though someone might say Pig, that's a funny name, no one in their real wildest dreams would guess the simple truth. The 2 weeks before the Grand Challenge trials were 2 weeks of concentrated activity, apart from Mrs. Hogget, who as usual was busy with her household duties. Everyone now knew what was going on. To begin with, Hogget altered the practice course, cutting out all of the drills like the prank bridge over the stream, and building a new course as like as possible to what he thought they might face on the day. As soon as Fly saw this, she became convinced that the plan which she had suspected was actually going to be put into operation, and she told the sheep, with whom she was now on speaking terms. Every night, of course, she and Babe talked endlessly about the coming challenge. before they settled to sheep. In the stable still, though, the Hoggets would have been perfectly happy for Babe to sleep at the house. So well-mannered was he, thoughtful as ever. Babe was anxious not about his own abilities, but about his foster mother's feelings. He felt certain she would have given her dog teeth to compete in the national trials, the dream of every sheepdog, yet she must sit and watch him. "Are you sure you don't mind, Mom?" he asked. Fly's reply was as practical as ever. "Listen, Babe," she said. "First of all, it wouldn't matter whether I mind or not. The boss is going to run you. No doubt of it. Second, I am too old and too fat. And anyway, I was only ever good enough for small local competitions. And lastly, I'll be the happiest collie in the world if you win. And you can win. Do you really think so?" "I'm sure of it," said Fly firmly. But all the same, she was anxious too. But one thing, she knew that the sheep pig, speedy as he now was, would still be much slower than the dogs, especially on the outrun. But equally, she was confident that he could make this hit up by promptness with which the sheep obeyed his requests. Here, at home, they shot through gaps all round obstacles as quick as a flash, never putting the foot wrong. The ones to be shed nipped out of a wind like lightning, and at the final penning, they popped in the instant that the boss opened the gate. But there was here, a home. What would strange sheep do? How would they react to Babe? Would he be able to communicate with them in time? For there would be none to waste. She determined to ask the bloke, and one evening, when Babe and the boss were watching television, she strolled off the hill. Since that first day, when she had been focused to speak civilly to them, they no longer cried wolf and her at her, and now they gathered round attentively at her first words. They were carefully polite. "Good evening," said Fly. "I wonder if you could be kind enough to help me. I have a little problem." As she explained it, speaking slowly and carefully, "The sheep are stupid," she said to herself. "Nobody will ever persuade me otherwise. You see what I mean?" she finished. There will be these strange sheep, and I'm sure they'll do what he tells them. Ask them, I mean, eventually, but I'll all take time, explain things. The last creature they'll be expecting to see is a pig, and they might just bolt at the sight of him before he even gets a chance to speak to them. "Password," said several voices. "What do you mean?" Fly said. "Password, password, password," said many voices now, speaking slowly and carefully. The wolves are stupid, they said to themselves. Nobody will ever persuade us otherwise. "What are babes got to do?" said one. "Is to learn what others learned when he was little lambs." 'Tis a saying, see, said another, as lambs do long at their mother's hocks, and then wherever we do go, to market or to another farm, we won't never come to no harm, so long as we do say the password. And if our babe do say it to they, why then they won't never run away. Fly felt her patience slipping, but she controls herself, knowing how important this information could be. Please, she said quietly, please, will you tell me the password? For a long moment, the flock stood silent. The only movement, a turning of heads, as they looked at one another. Fly could sense that they were nerving themselves to tell this age-old secret to give away to the wolf of all things, this treasured countersign. Then, 'tis for babe, someone said, 'tis for his sake. Ah, they all said softly, ah, and then, with one voice, began to in tone. I may be I may be Tam, I may be Moten, may be Lamb, but on the hoof or on the hook, I bun't so stupid as I look. Then, by general consent, they began to move away, grazing as they want. Is that it? Called Fly after them. Is that the password? And a murmur came back. Ah. But what does it all mean, Mum? Said Babe. That might, when she told him all that stuff about I may be you and the others I don't understand. It doesn't seem to make sense to me. That doesn't matter, Dale, said Fly. You just get it off by heart. It may make all the difference on one day. The day, when it dawned, was just that little bit too bright. On the opposite side of the valley, the trees and houses and haystacks stood out clearly against the background in the three-dimensional way that means rain later. Farmer Hogget came out and sniffed the air and looked around. Then he went inside again to fetch waterproof clothing. Fly knew the moment that she set eyes on the boss. That was the day. Dogs have lived so long with humans that they knew what's going to happen. Sometimes, even before their owners do. She woke Babe. Today, she said. Today what, Mum? Said Babe sleepily. Today is the day of the grand sheepdog trials, said Fly proudly. Which you, dear? She added in a confident voice, are going to win. With a bit of luck, she thought, and tenderly, she licked the end of his note. She looked critically at the rest of him, anxious as any mum that her child should be well turned out if it is to appear in public. Oh, Babe, she said, your coat is in an awful mess. What have you been doing with yourself? Look, just as far you have been rolling in a dog pond. Yes. You mean you have? Said Mum. Fly was on the point of us saying that puppies can't do such things, when she remembered that he was, after all, the pig. Well, I don't know about large white, she said. You have certainly grown enormous, but it's anyone's guess. What colour are you under that muck? Whatever's to be done. Immediately, her questions was answered. Come, pig, said Hogget's voice from the yard. And when they came out of the stables, there stood the farmer with a hosepipe, but scrubbing brush and pearls of soapy water. Half an hour later, when the clean, shining babe stood happily dripping, while Hogget brushed out the tussle of his tight, curled tail till it looked like candy floss, and Mrs. Hogget stuck her head out of the kitchen window. Right, so I'm going to stop there on page 112. We are getting close to conclude this story on the final 6th part of the sheep pig. Glad you enjoyed the story of the sheep pig. Do you find the story more interesting? About the sheep pig is set to participate on the Grand Challenge Sheepdog Trials. If you enjoyed this video, comment down below if you're interested. I will continue on another 6th part. It's going to be the final part of the sheep pig. Okay guys, so I hope to see you soon. I'll see you for a short while.